25, a friend of mine from college, we went to college together in Texas where we grew up, she called me up and invited me to Taos, New Mexico to visit her where she moved to for Thanksgiving. I'd been in Portland for about a year. So I was planning a road trip for about 6 weeks from November to mid-December anyway, about that time, to the Southwest. So I said, yeah, that sounds great. So I met her and 4 of our other college friends, and we had a wonderful Thanksgiving in Taos under the stars around a fire. And the next morning, we got up and we decided to go to coffee in town. And when we walked into the little coffee shop, there was a woman tucked away in the corner at a table, and she had tarot cards and she was offering tarot readings. So we all immediately were like, I want to do that. And for whatever reason, I said I would go last, which is unusual because I like to go first. Unless it's scary, then I like to be third. So I said, I'll go last. And I sat with my friends for a couple of hours while they all had tarot readings, and I watched this tarot reader. And I watched my friends approach one at a time, and with her shuffling the cards and smiling at them, and then beckoning them to sit down. And when it was finally my turn, I walked up to her and she did something very different as I approached her. She put the cards down and she looked a little startled. And then she closed her eyes and she put her hands on the table and she took a deep breath in and out. And I was like, what the fuck? And she opened her eyes and she said, you're not from here. And I'm cynical and sarcastic, so in my head, I was like, well, yeah, Taos is kind of a small town. If I was from here, you would know me, so right. But I looked at her and nicely said, you're right, I'm not from Taos. And she said, oh, no, you're not from here. I was like, do you mean Earth? And she said, yeah. And I was like, okay, so do you happen to know where I'm from? And she said, no, I don't actually, but I know it's important for me to tell you this, and it will reveal itself to you. And it's okay. And I have no fucking idea what the tarot reading was about after that. But I had it, and then my friends and I went back to my friend's house, and in the car I told them the story, and they thought it was really cool and interesting, and so did I. And then we get back to our house, and one of my friends and I decide to go outside under the stars and have a fire. And it was just the 2 of us, and I kept looking up at the sky. Beautiful stars in Taos, if you've never seen them. It's amazing. And I was like, what the fuck? Where am I from? You know what? I don't remember being dropped down in a spaceship, but maybe my mind was erased. I don't know. So I was smoking weed and drinking wine, and I ran inside and to my other friends and I said, you guys, does anyone else think it's like fucking nuts that someone said I'm from another planet today? And my friend Sharon, who's 20 years older than me, beautiful Southern accent, said, oh honey, I knew that. And I was like, well, I wish you would have told me that. And, you know, and so they just kind of laughed it off, and I went on with the rest of my trip. And it became a cool thing that happened, and I told the story the rest of my travels to Texas and California, and then I made it back to Portland. And I met up with a guy that I had been dating for coffee shortly after I got back into town, and I told him the story, and he said, oh yeah, that makes sense. I bet you're from Pleiades. And I was like, from where? And so he told me this theory. There's a New Age theory that there's these light beings from the star cluster of Pleiades that have, from the future, seeded themselves back into the human population to save the world with love. And I was like, well, it's not a Vulcan, it's not a Klingon, I guess that's okay. So I was like, fuck, what the fuck? So I go on the same day and I go see another friend for dinner and I tell her the story. And she was like, that must be why I brought you this book. And it was a book about Pleiades, and I was like, what? So, again, it became a really cool story for me, and I did definitely paid attention. It was like, I'm from Pleiades, I don't know. But I was also 25, and I went on with my life, and I was still kind of new to Portland, and I made friends and moved in with people, started my social work career, and then I met a man named Tom. And Tom and I, within a few months, decided we were madly in love with each other. And when that happens, when you're mid to late 20s, you start to make plans. You know, you think about having kids, raising a family, buying a house, traveling. So we started to really talk about those things, and we knew we wanted to be together forever. And but what actually happened is that Tom was a carpenter, and he was starting a business, and it took a while for him to try to get it off the ground, and it never really happened. And then I was a social worker, and that doesn't pay very well. And so, or at least it didn't back then, and without a master's degree also. And so I ended up supporting us for most of our relationship, but we still just felt like we had time and to do all those things that we still wanted to do. And we really, we still had all these plans together, and we started to get some momentum back. And when he turned 40, he went back to school, and he started studying architecture and engineering, and he started doing art, and he started working with developmentally disabled adults. And it was great, and we started talking about these dreams again. We started talking about maybe having babies, and it was, I was in my late 30s by this time, and I was like, you know, this is probably going to start to dry up, so we probably want to think about that. And he's like, yeah, when I'm out of college, you know, had a couple years left, had transferred to PSU. Now he's like 43, and he's getting closer to graduating. And then one night, we start watching a movie in our apartment, and I'm sitting next to him, and he coughed twice, and his head rolled back on the couch, and he died of a heart attack. Yeah, that really happened. But I didn't know he was dead, and so what I did was, for 4 minutes, I worked tirelessly to try to drag him off the couch and save his life. And then it took an additional 2 minutes for the paramedics to get there. And it was the defining moment of my life. And I've never been so alone and terrified and all those things. And in an instant, not only did I lose the love of my life, but everything we had planned was definitely not going to happen. So to try to describe my grief is really hard, but I'll tell you what it looked like. It was super messy. Tom and I had also been drinking quite a bit, and I continued that drinking without him on my own, and I was bringing home strangers and sleeping with them, like in our bed, in the apartment that he died in, which made me feel like total shit. I was trying to go to counseling and grief and loss group and all those things, but it was really hard for me to get my shit together. And what was happening in my friends' lives around me is they were getting married, they were buying houses, they were having babies. And I was going to baby showers and weddings and bachelorette parties, and I was hiding in the bathroom and crying, and I felt sick all the time. I tried to go back to work, and my brain was broken, and I thought I was gonna lose my job, and I couldn't afford the apartment that we lived in anymore. And my whole life was just like crumbling in front of me. And I cried in public. At night, I would go outside and break stuff in the street. A few times at 5 o'clock after work, I'd stand at the bus stop and scream "fuck" at the top of my lungs and pretend like I didn't do it. And then people were like, well, she doesn't look crazy, so nobody said anything to me. It was just a fucking shit show. And I started to kind of get my shit together a little bit. And then after a couple of years, I started dating, and I met this guy. We ended up becoming friends, and he told me about this healer that he listens to online that does these talks about radical acceptance and loving whatever arises and that kind of thing. And I was going through the talks, and I was looking at the list, and down the list of ways, there was one entitled the Pleiadian prophecy, and I was like, my Pleiades? Where I'm from? Okay. So I I waited till I was riding my bike, and I was riding my bike around, and I was listening to it in my headphones, and a couple minutes in, he says, if you're listening to this, you are one of them. And he confirmed the theory my friend 20 years ago had said, that you're light beings to come save the earth with love. And he said, if you're one of them, you've had some really hard stuff happen. So hard that you feel so alone and you want to give up. But that hard shit happening to you is part of you healing yourself so you can heal the planet. And I was like, okay. I got off my bike, I found the nearest grassy spot, and I crumbled into tears of relief. Because I was like, do I actually have a purpose? Is this all for a fucking reason? Yes, if I say it is. So I'm gonna say it is. Because it's been almost 5 years and it's still fucking hard. And I'm doing great, and life is better, but it's still fucking hard. And I don't have a house, and I don't have a baby. I don't have those things. Those things are not gonna happen. It's officially dried up, according to my doctors. Thank you. They like to tell me that whenever they can. But it doesn't fucking matter, because the idea that I have a purpose and things are okay, and that it's so much bigger than just those things, it doesn't fucking matter. Because I am writing, I'm taking care of myself, I live in a tiny apartment I can barely afford. Thank you, Portland housing crisis. Also, just a little shout out to that. I filed for bankruptcy, but what I do is, because I know it sounds crazy to think that I'm from another planet, but I take that and I treat it like a touchstone. I'm from Pleiades. I'm here to heal myself and to heal the planet. You're welcome, by the way. And that helps me survive this, because I've survived something no one else around me has. And it's really lonely and hard, and I have to create an anchor for myself, and that's the anchor I choose to create that was started for me by this tarot reader 20 years ago. And so it's pretty common, because I'm bright and loud and all those things, when I meet people after a while, and especially if they found out what's happened to me, they say, you're like no one I've ever met. And I say, I'm not from here.